and gentlemen, it is indeed a pleasure to be with you tonight. My associate, old one-eyed Bob, and I were making our way up from San Francisco to Seattle. We stopped off on the Oregon coast in the little town of Tillamook for some refreshment. Tillamook is known for the quality of its dairy cattle and related lactose products. We stopped off at a cheese factory that had just opened, and Chief Cheesemaker Peter McIntosh gave us a tour of the facility. Then, as we were sampling some of their curds and whey, Mr. McIntosh filled us in on the local lore. Long ago, the cheesemaker said, when Portugal still ruled the sea, there was a Portuguese ship loaded with treasure, heading for home, when it was blown off course, set upon by pirates, run aground on the shores of Neocony Mountain, not far from here. While the captain and the crew held off the bloodthirsty pirates on the beach, the first mate took 2 stout sailors, got that chest of treasure and dragged it up Neocony Mountain till they found a cleft in the rock just big enough those 2 sailors could crawl in and pull the chest in behind them. Then the first mate dislodged a boulder, sealing in his companions, grabbed a piece of slate from the forest floor and scrawled a crude map with X marks the spot, so he could find his way back, release his companions, retrieve the treasure once the pirate menace had been vanquished. But when the first mate regained the beach, he beheld a terrible sight. The sand ran red with the blood of the fallen, and the Portuguese captain and crew were kneeling, bound and gagged, in front of that dastardly pirate chief. The first mate drew his sword and stepped forward to defend his companions, but he too was felled by a cowardly piratical blow on the back of the head. He sank senseless to the sand, the slate map released from his fingers, and when he awoke, he too was bound and gagged, deep in the bowels of a pirate ship, already far out to sea. He never did return to Neocony Mountain, never did release his companions or retrieve that treasure. And so, Mr. McIntosh said, topping up our curds and whey, that treasure still lies up on Neocony Mountain for someone brave enough to find it. It just so happened that Cheesemaker McIntosh had a copy of the very map that first mate had made so many years ago, which I was able to procure for a nominal sum. So the next day, Bob and I found ourselves headed up Neocony Mountain, searching for that treasure. I was on my Palomino Calliope, and Bob was behind me on his pinto pony Pepita. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. It was a beautiful day, as I understand it always is on the Oregon coast. Bob was whistling the Duke's aria from Rigoletto, a particular favorite of his since he was present in Venice for its premiere. We came to the first outlook. I looked and saw the sea rolling in, blue and sparkling under that clear blue sky. We turned and continued our ascent up the mountain. The wind whipped up, the air temperature dropped. Behind me, old one-eyed Bob ceased his whistling, and the birds grew strangely silent. We came to the second outlook, and I saw that there was a scum of thick greenish-gray fog rolling in on the surf, obscuring the horizon. In its center was a sailing ship, glowing in eerie phosphorescent green, flying the flag of the Skull and Crossbones. "Look at there, Bob," I said, but it was on his blind side, so he couldn't see it. We continued our ascent, but the wind was blowing so stiff and fast, my brave Calliope, she bent her head and she tried to continue, but it was 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, 1 step forward, 5 steps back, and then I heard a shriek. Turned around, the wind had blown old Bob clear off his saddle. He was hanging onto the saddle horn with one hand. His feet were flapping out behind him like a flag on a flagpole. "Hang on, Bob," I said, reaching for the silver handle of my prize-winning lariat. But just as I spoke, he lost his grip and started hurtling toward the edge of the cliff. Pepita nickered, as if to say, "Apuerte, Clementina." "I am trying to hurry," I said, and then Calliope reared up, giving me enough purchase that I could lasso Bob's wrist and haul him into safety, saving him from certain death being dashed to pieces on the rocks below. We huddled behind Calliope and Pepita and used some of that wiry Oregon beach grass to tie rocks to our boots, weighing us down so we could continue against the wind. But once again, the four of us going up that hill, it was 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back, 1 step forward, 5 steps back. Then Calliope stopped, pawed the ground, and whinnied as if to say, "Look, Clementine, we're here. X marks the spot." I checked the map in my pocket. Calliope had it exactly right. We were in front of a huge boulder, and as we watched, 2 thick streams of cream-colored mist issued from either side, building up into 2 spectral figures. First, 2 sets of bony feet, then spindly legs, emaciated torsos, clad in the remnants of sailors' uniforms from long ago. Scrawny shoulders, skull-like heads. Eyes glowed in those skull-like cavities, and we stared into the black abyss of their mouths as their jawbones dropped open and those spectral sailors began to speak. Of course, they spoke Portuguese. So I could not understand a word they said. But Bob, who is fluent in Portuguese, especially the dialect spoken in the Portuguese fishing villages of the late 1500s, translated. Bob told me what those ghostly fellas was saying was this: "Go away. Leave us in peace. Do not disturb us or the treasure we have guarded with our lives for lo these many years. Or we will haunt you and your children and your children's children's children down unto the 14th generation." "Well, all right then, Bob," I said. "Let's you and I skedaddle and leave these fine fellas in peace with the treasure they have guarded with their lives for lo these many years." No sooner had I said the words, sun started to break through the clouds, a breeze freshened up, and those ghostly sailors started to dissipate. First their skull-like heads and their glowing eyes, then their scrawny shoulders, emaciated torsos, spindly legs, till all that was left was 2 sets of bony feet that blew away toe by 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 toe, leaving a glint of gold where each spectral sailor had stood, which turned out to be gold coins that Bob identified as Spanish reals from the time of King Ferdinand, in mint condition, worth a pretty penny. We pocketed those coins, untied the rocks from our boots, remounted Calliope and Pepita, and went back down Neocani Mountain. True, without the treasure we had hoped to procure, but with something better. with the thrill of an adventure well and honorably completed singing in our hearts. We stopped off at the cheese factory and told Chief Cheesemaker McIntosh of our adventure. He listened with a gleam in his eye, and then, as he handed us helpings of cheese curds to go, he said, "You're lucky, you two. There's many a one who's gone up Neocony Mountain a-searching for that treasure, but not so many who've returned to tell the tale." I'm Clementine Ryder, and it's been my great pleasure to share this tale with you. Thank you.